So for today's lesson, we're talking about measures of center and spread, which are what we call statistical attributes. So if you are watching this video, that means you've already gone through the presentation on your page and you have taken some notes about mean, median, mode, and range. And what you're going to need is you're going to need a copy of each of these graphs because we're going to do some data analysis based on these graphs and we're going to describe their attributes. I've glued mine into my notebook, so if you'll take just a few seconds, pause the video and glue these into your notebook just like this and then restart the video. So when you're given a set of numbers, sometimes it's easier to find mean, median, mode, and range if you're just given the data in raw form, which means they just give you the numbers. It does tend to be harder if you have to pull the data out of the graph. So we're going to practice today with pulling the data out of the graph. We're going to start with this particular example, which talks about the number of books that a group of students have checked out from the Media Center. So for each of these examples, we're going to find the mean, the median, the mode, and the range. So if you just want to set that up in your notebook, you sure can, and that way you know exactly what it is that we are looking for each one. You might remember that some of these are fairly easy, especially if you have a graph representation of the data, because all you have to do is look at the data to determine which ones are there. I think personally that mode is probably the easiest one to find in a graph situation because all you have to do is look for anything that is repeated. So when I'm looking for the mode, I'm looking for the one that appears the most often or the most frequent. And I can see very quickly in a graph format which one is there most often. Remember that mode can be more than one number. It can be just one number, or you can actually have no modes for a set of data if none of your numbers are repeated more than one time. This particular example for books checked out, as you can see, the number 0 is repeated twice, the number 1 is repeated twice, the number 2 is repeated twice, and the number 5 is repeated twice. So if we are looking for the mode for this particular set of data, you can very quickly see that we have multiple modes. In this particular case, 0 is a mode, 1, 2, and 5. So if you want to go ahead and write that on your paper. The next thing that I personally think that is pretty easy to determine about a graph is the range. And remember, the range describes the spread of the data. So spread means how far is it from the smallest or the minimum data value to the highest or the maximum data value. So my minimum data value is 0 here, and my maximum is 8. So if I want to determine how far apart those two are, I just have to do the maximum minus the minimum, which is 8 minus 0. And of course, my range would be 8 data points. Now, median and mean are a little bit different. To find the median, we're going to have to put our numbers in order. And if you're looking at a graph, they're already in order, but you have to make sure that you're careful to pull them out of the graph correctly. So if you'll watch what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through my graph and I'm going to pull out every time there's a data representation. So 2 people said they had no books checked out from the Media Center. So I'm going to write down 0 and 0 because that represents the 2 people who said, I don't have any books. The next thing I see is that 2 people said 1. So I'm going to write down 1 and 1. Then 2 people said 2. So I'm going to write down 2 and 2. And then 1 person said 3. So I'm going to write down 3. This person said 4. These 2 people said 5. So I do have to write it down twice. And then I had a person that said a 6 and a person that said 8. Now, if I'm wishing to find the median, I'm looking for the middle of my set of values. Now, there are some quick mathematical ways to do this, but the foolproof method is to eliminate the smallest and the largest number, because if I asked you to line up in the hallway and tell me who was standing in the middle, you guys know it can't be the first person in line and it can't be the last person in line. So we could just continue to eliminate the first person and the last person until we got to the person who was in the middle. You can do the same thing with numbers. So it can't be this 0 and it can't be this 6. not this 1, not this 5, not this 1, not this 5, not this 2, or this 4, and here becomes the dilemma. If you get to the center of your data values and you've eliminated a minimum and a maximum and you have 2 numbers left in the middle, then you have a couple of options. If you know enough about numbers, then you know that you can just figure out what's between 2 and 3. But sometimes you're going to have values that are very far apart, and you have to have a way to determine what's in between those two. Because remember, we're trying to find what is in the middle of those 2 data values. So the foolproof method is to say, what if I add them up? So 2 plus 3 is equal to 5, and then I divide that by 2 because I had 2 numbers. So in the middle of 2 and 3, we all know would be 2.5. So the median for this set of data would be 2.5 because 2.5 would be in the middle. Now we all know you can't have 2.5 books, but remember, your median doesn't necessarily have to be one of your data points. It just represents the middle of your data set. The last one is the mean. So for this one, you can use a calculator. There could be an off chance where you would have to solve a question without a calculator, but you can still do that. It's just basic addition and division, so we can all do that. But for this purpose, we do allow you to use a calculator. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our data values that we've already written out for our median, and we're going to add them together to get their sum. So we're looking for a sum of the data, and then we're going to divide it by the number of values that we have. So if you want to watch what this looks like, we're going to do 0 plus 0 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 5 plus 6 plus 8. So our sum for that data set is 37. Now, we have to know how many values we had. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we're going to do 37 divided by 12. And you see that we get an answer of 3.08 and then a repetitive 3. This means that this is a repeating decimal, non-terminating. So you could write 3.083 with that bar notation to show that that's a repeating decimal. Most of the time, we're going to round that off, and we're going to say this is about 3.1 because the 8 rounds my 0 up to a 1. So I hope that this gives you an idea of what it is that you're looking for. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to see if you can solve for the mean, median, mode, and range for each of these sets of data. And then whenever you are finished, you can watch the next video that will go over the solutions for those data sets.